De'Aaron Fox wants out of Sacramento. Jimmy Butler wants out of Miami. And in the past, maybe the Knicks would have wanted to get in on that action, but can they kind of mosey their way into those future trades and get themselves a good role player? Let's talk about it right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And he's Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster, also the Saturday co-host of the Locked On NBA podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And in case you haven't already, make sure you check out the Locked On Knicks newsletter, which is a new thing that we're offering for you guys in addition to the podcast. Yes, the Locked On Knicks daily newsletter, one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com and start your day with the all new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. And of course, we want to thank you guys for making us a part of your day today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. Make sure to hit that auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode. And today we are going to be talking about trade wins around the NBA. So we've got Jimmy Butler wanting out of Miami, which has been a story for a little while. But, certainly one that is escalating with him now serving his third suspension, this one indefinite after he just walked out of a practice the other day. Seems like things are starting to reach a little bit of a fever pitch there, and he probably shouldn't be with the team beyond the trade deadline unless Pat Riley is really that petty. But at any rate, that's happening. De'Aaron Fox today, all of a sudden it comes out in today's news that the Kings are looking towards moving him before the deadline, which seems like something that Fox has prompted himself with his agent, Rich Paul. So can the Knicks get involved with these two deals? I think for once, it's kind of nice that they're not looking to go for the star in these deals because they've certainly taken care of all those moves themselves. But Gavin, let's start the discussion with, I think the Fox deal actually is the one that the Knicks should be trying to kind of weasel their way into if they're able to. I just feel like Sacramento, I mean, I don't know, maybe there's a world where they could continue sort of, I don't even want to call it contending, but trying without Fox there. Or maybe they try to get a return. It seems like San Antonio is probably the most likely trade partner. It seems like De'Aaron Fox wants to go there and pair with Victor Wembanyama. So maybe they're able to get a package with like Chris Paul and Stephon Castle and something like that, and build a roster that can still sort of compete the rest of this year. But I think they're probably going to look to kind of tear it down to studs at this point. And I think that might be where the Knicks should try to swoop in because they have a number of guys that are going to have expiring contracts soon that they possibly won't want to pay what they're worth once it hits the point of having to do so, particularly a couple rookies or guys on their rookie deals right now.
Yeah, first of all, to your initial point, we were joking before the show, but I was just thinking pre-Jalen Brunson, De'Aaron Fox asking out would have been, all right, I need to drop everything. I need to run home. I need to do an emergency podcast immediately. And it was such a feeling of relief when I saw that. And my reaction was, oh, interesting. And not, oh boy, we gotta talk about that. That's exciting. The Knicks finally relevant. If we just get De'Aaron Fox after, you're scarred a little bit by 2 decades of always chasing the next guy. And it is really nice. The Knicks are not in the mode for the guy. They are in the mode for a guy to shore up this rotation as good as the benches look. So I did a little quick rundown of the Kings roster, and I'm really fascinated to see what the approach is in Sacramento. As you say, they could potentially tear it down to the studs. I don't think that is ownership's ideal scenario, because I know coming into the year, there was a general sense that they had a playoff mandate, which I think ramped up even further when they decided to fire Mike Brown and Monty McNair. Was very much on the hot seat, and I'm sure that was prompted by Vivek Ranadive, but McNair on some level was like, all right, this isn't working and it needs to work immediately. We went on and got DeRozan. We were so good 2 years ago, and they were a team before making the playoffs 2 years ago. What was it, a 16-year streak without making the playoffs? So I think they would be reticent to do a total teardown, which when I'm going through their roster, the obvious two most intriguing names are Keegan Murray and Devin Carter. And I think we can wipe those off immediately. I don't really see a world where, I mean, again, even if you were rebuilding, why trade away like a third-year two-way wing and a first-year guard who right after coming back from a long-term injury looks really promising? So I don't think, like, whether they're trying to win, whether they are actually like crazy enough to say, all right, let's tear this down to the studs again and go all the way back on this. I don't think those two are on the table. The next four guys I had: Keon Ellis, most interesting; Trey Lyles, then a return for Doug McDermott, and then Alex Len as like yet another depth big. But was there anyone else that intrigued you on the roster, or what's your read on the situation? Because I wouldn't be surprised, even if they do a trade for assets, they don't try to relatively quickly spin those assets into something real.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on Devin Carter, where I can't see a world where they look to move him, especially because I think if you move on from De'Aaron Fox and you don't get a clear heir apparent for that point guard spot, then the whole rest of the season is essentially a tryout for Devin Carter at that point. See what he's got. I mean, he came to this team with, or into the league, in the draft with sort of a rep of like, he might be a point guard at the next level. He might just be like I think we went on a couple times and said like he might be like a Josh Hart type, which is why we were both like super into him. So maybe just a secondary ball handler, but I think they would want to like see what they have with him, especially because he's on a rookie deal. It just gives them an opportunity to get a really good look at him the rest of the season, then start figuring out what his role is going to be going forward. I don't know if I would necessarily fully dismiss Keegan Murray right away. I do think that he's a super valuable player. I think he's sort of leveled out a little bit, like since his really standout rookie year. Just looking at his stats, like 12.2 points his rookie year, 15.2 points last year, 12 points this year in more minutes. Like he's playing more minutes than he's ever played. He's shooting the worst percentage of his career at this point. He's shooting his worst from three by a pretty wide margin.
Yeah.
So I don't want to call him a reclamation project, but he's not exactly like tearing it up right now. He's shooting, 32% from three, was shooting 36% last year and shot 41% his rookie year from three. So you kind of want to you can maybe try to neg the Kings into, thinking that he's not actually that good anymore or something, or just be like, do you really want to have to entertain the idea of paying this guy as soon as this offseason? Because that's a thing that could potentially happen. I don't know. What's your thought on that? Like, it is a guy who's in decline. Like, do you think they would really want to be like, hey, you're up for a rookie extension this coming offseason? Like, are we really going to give you like $15 million or whatever? Versus the Knicks, who, if they get him and inherit the first round bird rights with him, they get the ability to just pay him whatever. Their hard cap at the second apron goes away starting next year. And if they are able to sort of reclaim him and get him back to the level that he was playing as like a rookie and a sophomore, then all of a sudden they've got themselves like a good bench player, and the cap implications don't really matter because then they just kind of say it's time to just go for it anyway.
Yeah, look, we've seen teams do versions of that move. I'm trying to remember an example where it was a top 5 pick, like Keegan Murray was, because I was thinking immediately of a former and a current Knick. Like I was thinking of Quentin Grimes getting traded by Detroit because he shot badly for 20 games, but obviously that's different because he doesn't have Murray's size, he doesn't have his pedigree, and Detroit wasn't as attached given that he wasn't their pick. I think of Landry Shamet, who was like really good his first year and a half, and then I think got traded. Was it the JJ Redick trade? Got traded from the Sixers to the Clippers, if I'm remembering correctly, and that was after he got off to a great start of his career. But I don't know. I think it would be crazy for them to trade him. I think Sacramento, a lot of credit to Doug Christie for figuring out these last few weeks, is coming into that Knicks game. They had won 10 of 12. I think it is a classic case of too many cooks in the kitchen there, bringing in DeMar DeRozan, and just a situation where, like, I don't really see any explanation for a guy at whatever, 23, 24 years old, all of a sudden becoming a substantially worse player. I think it's that he has the ball in his hands a lot less, and he's found other ways to contribute. 7 rebounds, like still 1.5 assists per game. Like, I don't know. He's a good athlete. He's a solid enough defender. I believe in the shot. I believe in the offense. I think in a different context on a different team, you would see him on a trajectory, maybe like kind of similar to a DeAndre Hunter, which is obviously quite a valuable player. Could they be convinced to move off him? Yeah. Do I think the Knicks have the assets to make that happen? Not really, unless they're for some reason in love with the Jericho Sims or a Pacom Dadier, or they want to win right away. And they're saying, you know what, Precious Achua, much better fit for our team than Keegan Murray. And if we get that Washington first and we get Tyler Kolek, that's a good trade. But I think it is, if I were Sacramento, there would be nothing on the Knicks that would appeal to me for someone that has the ceiling I think Keegan Murray still has.
Yeah, I guess it would just come down to if cap permutations started factoring in, or I mean, I really think it just comes down to like money. It's just like Sacramento's not a big spendy team. They're not a team that typically is over the cap, and certainly not going to spend money on like a pretty middling roster, which like I feel like if they get rid of Fox, they're probably going to be like, I don't know, maybe Sabonis wants to stick around, but I could also just as easily, like, if they get rid of Fox, I could see Sabonis as soon as like this offseason being like, hey, I kind of came here to play with Fox. Like, I don't really want to be here anymore. And then wanting to move off of him. And then, given the size of the market and, just the overall sensibilities of that team over the years, I would say like, I mean, maybe they have a relatively new owner who seems a little more invested in winning, which is good. But I guess I could see a world where they would just be like, you know what? Like, I think we're good. I think that we can like just move off of him because we don't want to pay him like 15 million a year to be a role player that's more of a finishing piece for a good team than a piece for a rebuilding team. But to your point, maybe
why wouldn't another team top the Knicks offer? I guess like I'm thinking Orlando. Like I would give him a 1st-round pick and a half because they need shooting. They love his size. I just think there's another team out there that would blow the Knicks out of the water.
That's where you just got to trust Leon Rose to properly neg them. He's just got to come in there and just tell him that, Keegan Murray actually is terrible. And
I just imagine like Monty McNair, like hanging off a cliff and be like, sign the paper, Monty, sign the paper.
We'll see how it goes. But, I think the more interesting guy is actually Keon Ellis. So let's go back in just a second. We'll talk about Keon Ellis, who's the guy probably more likely to actually potentially be available to the Knicks in just a moment. But first, we got to let you know about our friends over at Game Time. Attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. And, it's a fun thing, NFL playoff games. I mean, now there's kind of only the Super Bowl left. So if you want to go to that, it's going to be maybe a little bit of a pretty penny, but nothing like going to a football game. It's the biggest stadiums, most people, the tailgate is crazy. It's a great time. I don't have much experience going to playoff games as a Jets fan, but I hear it's great. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I recently used Game Time Picks to find tickets for, the copy wants me to say for an upcoming NFL playoff game. I don't go to playoff games, and none of the New York teams are good. I went to a Knicks game, whatever. Anyway, browsing through the deals was simple. I found great value for all kinds of seats around the venue. The super deal is especially impressive, offering the best value for the event. And the app's features like seat views before you buy and all-in pricing with no surprise fees at checkout made the experience smooth and reliable. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and the lowest price guarantee gave me peace of mind. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, and we're back in to keep talking through these potential trades with the Kings. And Gavin, I think the guy that we identified before the show that we thought would be the most intriguing in terms of the Knicks potentially trading for him is Keon Ellis. And Similar to, I guess, Keegan Murray, but differently, maybe even more so in terms of like this guy has less upside and is clearly, a role player and not a guy that even particularly has stuck around the rotation all that consistently in Sacramento, but a guy who's only making $2 million this year. He has a team option for another like $2.5 million next year. So very affordable contract because he was converted from a two-way deal. He's been pretty good, like all in all, in his career so far. I mean, his 3-point shooting is kind of crazy. Like
Yeah.
it's actually a little insane just how well he shoots from three. 41% last year on about 3 attempts per game, and then now with one more attempt per game this year has gone up to almost 45% from three. So maybe he's a little more of a commodity than we're giving him credit for, but 7.7 points, 2.4 boards, 1.3 assists, 1.5 steals, about a block per game. I mean, he's a defensive maestro, which the Knicks can always use another one of. I just think this guy, like, if the Knicks can get their hands on him, he's kind of that perfect wing that they've been looking for to back up OG and to back up McHale and take the load off of them a little bit, and Hart for that matter. But yeah, I think if they were able to get a hold of him in this deal, I think they should totally go after him and try to potentially make a deal, even if it takes like that Washington pick and maybe, one of their rookies this year and potential other like second round capital. I think he's a guy worth going after and someone worth retaining long term.
Yeah, he is. I mean, you said it, but he is absurdly efficient. I've referenced it before, but Cleaning the Glass has this stat called points per shot attempt, which is exactly what it sounds like. Basically, like how much value do you generate each time you shoot? He is 99th percentile in that category. That is not the worst. That is essentially the best in the NBA. He's 73% at the rim. That's 93rd percentile. He is 45% on mid range. That is 76th percentile. You mentioned 45% on three. That is 92nd percentile for a two guard. And like he just very clearly contributes to winning. Like I am slightly mystified by this. I think maybe it was just in an effort to make sure Malik Monk and DeMar DeRozan were on the floor enough. But under Mike Brown, despite being such a great find for them the last 2 years, like he just did not have a consistent role on this team. Like those last few Mike Brown games, he played 14 minutes, 5 minutes, 14 minutes, 13 minutes. Doug Christie takes over. All of a sudden, he's averaging 26 minutes a game in the month of January. And lo and behold, Sacramento is a much better basketball team. I would describe him, Alex, as like a really rich man's Landry Shamet, better shooter, better defender, better playmaker, just does a lot of the same things on a higher level. And to your point, I don't know if you want to get into the mock trade now, if you want to save it for next segment, but I came up with something that I think would be slightly feasible. And I'll give the same exact caveat I gave with Keegan Murray, that I do think if another contender really wants him and is just in love with him, there are certainly teams that could just blow the Knicks out of the water. Like Oklahoma City could give up 2 first-round picks and not lose any sleep over it and snatch him, and they would maybe be smart to do so. But if for whatever reason he flies under the radar, I think unlike Keegan Murray, it's actually pretty feasible that the Knicks could go and get him.
Yeah, hit me with the mock trade. Let's just do it this segment because we're going to talk about Miami in the next one and see if the Knicks can weasel their way into a Jimmy Butler trade too. But yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so what I came up with, and I don't know why this didn't work on ESPN, but it worked fine on Spot Track, and I couldn't find like a logical reason it didn't work on ESPN, so I'm going to assume it's fine. I had Jericho Sims, Tyler Kolek is sort of the placeholder first round guy in there. If you wanted, if Sacramento for whatever reason strongly preferred Pacom Dadier or Ariel Hukporti or I don't even know who else. Like sure, like throw those guys in, but Tyler Kolek was my placeholder here, and that Washington quote unquote first, that is 1 through 10 protected in 2025, 1 through 8 protected in 2026, and if not converts to a 2026 and 2027 second. And the Knicks could also, if they really wanted to spice things up, and I would presume Leon Rose would like to hold on to some assets, they have 8 extra seconds and they have their 2026 pick swap and 2030 pick swap. So if you needed like one more thing to push it over the edge, you could do that. But I think those first 3, and then if Sacramento really like played hardball, maybe one of those pick swaps, like I think that could get it done for him if Sacramento again is like maybe interested in doing a soft tank this year.
Yeah, I think I would be pretty comfortable doing that. I mean, it would kind of sting a little bit to move Kolek before figuring out what he really has, but if I think one thing that could tip the scales the Knicks way in that deal is that if Sacramento is then staring down the barrel of like a world without De'Aaron Fox, maybe then they're like, well, let's just get as many young point guards as we can in here to try out. And, maybe they give Devin Carter a shot at it this year, but also say, hey, let's get Tyler Kolek over here. Like, he looked pretty good in preseason. He's been tearing it up in G League. Obviously, Keon Ellis is a guy who is a partial G League success story for them. So that's a program that they believe in. So if they believe in the numbers and stuff that Tyler Kolek is putting up in the G League, then maybe they say, hey, this is a guy worth investing in. He's on a really good deal, honestly. I think that's kind of like that would be a thing that would stand out to me if I was potentially going to get him in a trade is like his contract is really, really good. Like it's, basically a full, minimum for, but like slightly more than that. So like it's better in other trades as well. Like skirts that minimum clause, where you can't aggregate minimums, I think, because they paid him the maximum of what was allowed on the second round scale, but it's still only like 2.5 million for the next 3 years after this year. It's a pretty solid deal. So like, maybe that's what pushes them to go for this deal over someone else's. Like, even if OKC would say like, hey, we'll give you two of our variously protected first round picks or whatever, maybe they look at Kolek, and if that's a guy that they were like, oh, we had sort of a first round grade on him this year, we ultimately didn't take him, when we had the opportunity, but now we sort of want to go for it because he looks really good in these like garbage time minutes for the Knicks, and then also just is really tearing it up in G League. Maybe that's a guy that they look to try to, be part of the young core for them going forward. But yeah, otherwise, parting with that Washington first, I mean, that would just kind of be, I guess, the cherry on the top of just finishing going through that treasure trove of picks to build this roster hopefully into a championship one. And I think I'd be comfortable doing that. I don't really like, you're not really saving that for any like huge move because it's still sort of a Mickey Mouse pick, if I'm being honest. Like, it's protected top 10 this year and then top 8 next year, and then just turns it in 2 seconds next season, and then the season after that. So the 2026 and 27 Washington seconds, which is pretty solid. I mean, that gives them an opportunity to find 2 Tyler Kolek-esque players and give them, a decent contract. Like, second round contracts with the new CBA are becoming even more valuable because they have like that little like extra loophole to them where you can control the value a little more. And I think the cap hold is much lower when it comes to like building your roster before you sign them. So you can have their cap hold for like $800,000 and then pay them like 2.5 million in their first season, which is nice. So, maybe that's intriguing. But I think there's some things going for the Knicks offer here. And, I think Kolek and that Washington first, which would probably turn into 2 very high seconds, I think maybe could be enough to entice them to part with Ellis.
Yeah, and I think that's, to your point, little painful to move off Kolek. I've grown attached to him. I want to see him just. Do you remember that game Deuce had his rookie year against the Rockets where like Brunson was hurt, like randomly everyone was, and he had 16 points and 9 assists. We were like, whoa, that was fun. Like, I obviously am not rooting for Jalen Brunson, never missed a game. Maybe he's having his first kid. I don't know. I would love for Tyler Kolek, random night. Maybe they're playing the Wizards just to get 35 minutes. Because I just kind of think if you put him in the lineup with the actual starting guys, he's putting up like 14 assists. Like, I think the guy, I've said it a few times, like, he is just an astoundingly good passer. Very fair if you have questions if he's ever going to be good enough defensively to play like anything more than like a bit bench role in the NBA. But I really like the guy. That being said, I think Keon Ellis like does kind of substantially tilt your ceiling. And we've both kind of been in agreement. The Knicks need one more wing and ideally would not have to give up Mitchell Robinson to do it. And this is one of the few trades I see that gets you there. So I'm a big fan. But Alex, we also have to talk about our friends over in Miami. I can't say I'm losing any sleep over that situation blowing up. So maybe we talk about the Heat as a potential playoff opponent for the Knicks too, and also what the trade could bear. Let's get into that next on Locked On Knicks. And we are back here on Locked on Knicks. We have buried the Sacramento Kings. Now we get to do something much more enjoyable and bury our good friends in Miami. This is not new news, but we thought we should address it because we haven't really had a free day to do so. Things are not going good there. Jimmy Butler was just suspended for the third time. If you've not been keeping up, I did not misspeak. The third time because he went to practice. He found out that Haywood Highsmith is starting over him, and he did the meme, Haywood Highsmith over me. He left. Miami suspended him. Kevin Love, I don't know if you've caught this, Alex. He's like posting like movie scenes to represent each twist and turn in this Jimmy Butler story. So he's won his championship. He's having fun in his old age. We're having a little bit of fun at the Heat's demise here in real time. Of course, they're finding out quickly that Kel'el Ware might be a superstar. So they're not doing too badly. We don't have to cry for them too much. But I am curious if you think there's any way the Knicks could take advantage of this and maybe steal someone from Miami's roster.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, I think it would be the guy that took Jimmy Butler's starting spot in Haywood Highsmith. I don't know. He stands out to me as like the one guy that would be, it sort of fits that same mold as Keon Ellis. Like he's a really good 3-point shooter. He's shooting 40% from three this year. He's just kind of sort of lanky hustle guy, 6'7", has that like sort of Mikal and OG size profile a little bit, although not quite as, I don't think he has quite the crazy wingspan that those two do. But yeah, shooting over 40% from three this year, which you love to see. And that's not really like an anomaly for him, I don't think. Like he's shot 39.5% last year, 40.5% this year. He did struggle earlier in his career, but he's got like 2 seasons worth now, or like 1.5 seasons worth, saying that he's probably figured it out as a shooter. I don't think he would really blow anyone away. Like he's not going to be more than like a 20-minute a game role player on this team, but I think that's kind of just exactly what the Knicks need. Like just a little insurance policy, like if OG has to miss a couple games or Josh Hart has missed a couple games. I would say if Mikal does, but I think we could just assume he's going to play every game unless he misses one, in which case then we address that head on. But you can pretty much always count on him being there. But at some point, I feel like OG is going to have to miss a game, or Josh Hart's going to have to miss another game. And if that day comes up, you want to have just a little more depth there. Also, just having a guy that's a little bigger than Landry Shamet. Hopefully, then once you get Mitch back, then you can have like, if you want a truly big presence off the bench, like you could play Highsmith with a Mitchell Robinson, or you could play Highsmith, Precious, and Mitchell Robinson, and the spacing probably wouldn't be the worst. I mean, like if Precious can get the cuts right, and if it's one of those days where he happens to be hitting threes, like you could put together a decent lineup that's pretty large and still, able to not like get shot off the floor, hopefully, and definitely wouldn't because of the defensive presence there. So yeah, I think he's the guy I would go after. I mean, I'm looking at the list you put together here too. Other than Highsmith, maybe they go after like Kevin Love. I wonder if he would just be more of like a buyout candidate at this point. But I don't know. I feel like he doesn't have too much left at this point, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah.
Or Josh Richardson, intriguing. Though I think, if I'm not mistaken, he maybe makes a little bit too much money to make this deal work. But let me just look at that real quick. He is currently making, I guess only $3 million. So not bad. His days of big paydays, I guess, have finally expired. So yeah, maybe an interesting guy to go after too, if you want a little extra bench depth. Although I don't know that I would necessarily want Josh Richardson over like Cameron Payne at this point. So I'd probably be all right with just passing on him.
Yeah, I think Highsmith is obviously the most intriguing guy, and I would even lean into like I really want this team to have like a 5-minute lockdown lineup, and the easiest way to get to that right now is Deuce, Hart, Anunoby, Mikal, Mitch. But if you could just have the flexibility to give one of those wings extra rest, like if Mikal's been out there for 30 or he's on track to play 40 plus minutes, and you say, you know what, we want to put him on the bench, and you could put in someone like Highsmith who could provide kind of a low level facsimile of maybe the version of Mikal we saw earlier this season, which is just purely 3-and-D. Like that would be fantastic. And he does really provide defensively better than a 76th percentile block percentage, 81st percentile steal percentage. His overall efficiency, as you noted, is really, really good. 78th percentile in PSA. So he profiles like pretty much exactly what I would want in an insurance player. So I'm with you. He would be really exciting for me. I just wonder if Miami is going to want to move off him because they are the team that never wants to tank, always wants to win. Pat Riley is in his early 80s at this point, not getting any younger. I don't think he has any plans for an extended rebuild. So I think I just find it a little difficult to think they're going to trade Haywood Highsmith if they don't think they can get better. Unless, and we'll throw the same caveat on it, like they are for some reason, like we're really in love with one of the Knicks' younger guys as a prospect. Maybe then they'd be willing to do a similar version of the Keon Ellis deal, maybe a little less just because Highsmith is not quite the shooter that Ellis is. But that would really be the only path, especially considering that they're giving up Butler. So they kind of need another big wing.
Yeah, the irony of this whole Butler situation too is that in spite of it all, they're still first in their division right now. Like they're still solidly looking like a playoff team. So it's like at a certain point, you're just like, I don't know. They're gonna probably still make the playoffs anyway. So why are they? Wow, actually, I did not realize how far Orlando had fallen to recently. 24 and 24 at this
They've
point.
strangely been worse since getting Paolo and Bronze back, which doesn't really make sense. But
It's totally crazy. But anyway, yeah, Miami's sitting pretty in first in the Southeast Division. I just had to go double check myself on that because I was like, wait, wasn't Orlando like right on the Knicks' heels like
yeah,
2 weeks ago? Like, what the hell happened? Anyway, yeah, I think they would probably hang on to him. I think it's way more likely that the Kings sort of soft rebuild than the Heat doing it. And the Heat also, I just feel like never in a million years would want to actually deal with the Knicks in a trade. Maybe Leon Rose has it in him to break Pat Riley of that, but I think even Leon Rose's powers only go so far. So I don't really think that would be super likely to happen. But if the Knicks are able to weasel in there and the thing for Miami that maybe makes it so that the Knicks could get involved or any other third team is just that Miami is dealing with being extremely capped out, similar to the Knicks, where they're going to have to adhere to the rules where they're not allowed to take back more money than they send out in any deal, which then maybe if push comes to shove and they're making this Butler deal and they need to offload a little more salary, then they can offload Highsmith to the Knicks, and then the Knicks can finagle something where they send, I don't know, Jericho Sims or whatever to another team to, make the money work for them. And, some other team just takes like 2 second-round picks and Jericho Sims just to finish facilitating the deal, but the Knicks get a valuable player out of it. But, that's something that maybe you could talk about when you talk to Jeremy Cohen, who we're going to have on later this week, or you're specifically going to have on later this week. I'm sad I will have to be working when you guys are talking, but I think there's some interesting ways for the Knicks to kind of work around their tough cap situation. And if they don't get in on one of these 2 big star deals, hopefully they could still find something else out. And, maybe that's where they go get a Chris Boucher or something, who was linked to the Knicks also today and who you talked to Jeremy about. But Gavin, unless you had anything else to add, I think we can probably wrap this particular discussion up.
No, that's it. I think I was just going to say, even if the Knicks don't get these 2 guys, this is a good trade deadline primer because it got my gears turning a little bit, and it kind of it makes me think it's maybe a little bit more feasible than I had in my head that the Knicks could get a wing that could actually get some minutes for them without giving up Mitchell Robinson, which to me, or like the way he's playing lately, Precious Achiuwa, which to me is kind of the ultimate goal of these exercises. We'll see if they can actually pull it off. I have a lot of faith in Leon Rose. He hasn't let us down yet, even if he has to hang Monty McNair over a cliff to pull it off. Until that day happens, he is Alex Wolf. I'm Gavin Shaw. We'll talk to you very soon on Locked On Knicks.